a service of CNC Worldwide.
The Daily is a service of CNC News brought to you by the Greece Chamber of Commerce, providing more than 800 members with business solutions since 1984. There is a lot to talk about. Today, Teamsters Local 118 has rejected the contract proposal agreed to by Wegmans and the Local 118 leadership. This is the second time union members have voted down a contract proposal. It means the union could strike at any time. Wegmans Vice President of Distribution, Mike Cullen, said the company is prepared if that happens and its stores will remain open for business without interruption. The company said the agreement it reached after talks resumed earlier this month included a $1,000 lump sum payment to all full-time employees and an 18% raise over 6 years. It did include the move to the Wegmans retirement plan, plus a package of retirement assistance options. One of the attorneys who will argue the Greece versus Galloway case before the U.S. Supreme Court next week says there's no question government bodies may legally open their meetings with prayer. Brett Harvey of the Alliance Defending Freedom spoke Tuesday night at a forum on the case in downtown Rochester.
Prayers that open local legislative meetings are permissible. Okay? They don't violate the Establishment Clause. Well, if those prayers are permissible, and that's what the town's doing, the only question, the legal question remaining is, who gets to decide what to say in the prayer? And it focuses on whether or not the government has an obligation to censor these prayers.
This case deals with whether or not it is constitutional for the Greece Town Board to begin its meetings with prayer delivered mainly by invited Christian pastors. Heather Weaver, an attorney from the American Civil Liberties Union in Washington, said the argument of a time-honored tradition should not trump the Constitution itself.
Even if it were true that anyone can give a prayer, it will be of little comfort to the Jewish or Muslim or Sikh zoning applicant that today's religiously coercive Christian prayer will be followed next month or 2 months from now by a religiously coercive prayer of some other faith.
The High Court hears this case on November 7th. The Rochester Democrat and Chronicle is leaving the Gannett Building on Exchange Boulevard in downtown Rochester after more than 80 years and planning to build a new headquarters at the corner of East Main and Clinton next to the Midtown Rising site. Democrat and Chronicle president and publisher Michael Cain announced the move to the newspaper's staff Tuesday afternoon. The downsized digital D&C uses only a fraction of the existing building. They've had it up for sale for some time. Exactly when the paper moves to its new site is still being worked out. Cain said it does not depend on selling the existing building first. Eastman Kodak begins trading on the New York Stock Exchange again on Friday. Kodak hasn't traded on Wall Street since the company entered Chapter 11 in 2012. Now, more than 18 months later, this smaller, reorganized Kodak will be listed again. The new symbol will be KODK. CEO Antonio Perez says this is an important moment for new Kodak, and Kodak analyst George Conboy of Brighton Securities says he's right. Conboy says new Kodak has been trading quietly on smaller exchanges for a couple of weeks, but being back on Wall Street gives potential investors a chance to kick the tires and also makes the company more open in its reporting. But he says whether they buy or not depends on Perez doing better with new Kodak than he did with old Kodak. A Monroe County court jury has found a Rochester man guilty of second-degree murder in the stabbing death of his girlfriend's roommate. Antonio Ortiz Jr. was accused of stabbing William Fergus 46 times early on the morning of April 4th. Ortiz then stole a couple of TV sets, the victim's wallet, and his phone. Ortiz testified in his own defense that he killed Fergus during a drug-induced hallucination, but the jury didn't buy it. Ortiz faces 25 to life when he is sentenced in January. One of the nation's top firearms manufacturers and importers is leaving Rochester and moving its business to South Carolina. American Tactical Imports manufactures AR-15 assault rifles and it imports weapons from Europe. The company said its decision to relocate is driven partly because it considers New York unfriendly to the Second Amendment due to the New York SAFE Act, and partly because South Carolina is the port of entry for its imported products. The company begins its move next month. It's bringing 117 jobs to the South. 2 alleged bank robbers are in custody after state police pursued their getaway car on the Thruway in Genesee County. Troopers spotted the vehicle heading west out of the Rochester area. The driver refused to stop and hit one of the patrol cars. Troopers gave chase until the fleeing car crashed into the center median near exit 48 in Pembroke. Driver Armand Thompson of Buffalo and a passenger who hasn't been identified were arrested, turned over to Arundequoit police, where they face robbery and reckless endangerment charges. The state attorney general has announced more than $12 million in grant funding for Rochester and other cities around the state. Rochester's share will be about $2 million. The money is for land banks intended to help rebuild urban neighborhoods. The money comes from last year's national mortgage settlement with major banks. It takes advantage of a state law passed after the collapse of the housing market. It allows nonprofits to buy up foreclosed or abandoned houses and clear the land for redevelopment, taking a lot of the red tape out of the way so it can be done more quickly. The backers hoped it would help neighborhoods gradually come to terms with blight and be able to rebuild lot by lot. To the left of the player window are the links to these and other stories on CNC pages, and at the bottom, if you're watching on CNC, links to use that you can post information directly to us. The next news podcast is As It Happens, and the updates are as necessary. I'm Bud Lowell, CNC News.